Let us find Inspector Ghote when he was simply an assistant inspector in the crowded and confused area of Bombay called Dadar. He is holding a letter that has just come through the door of his flat in the Dadar police station. From the Commissioner of Police, Bombay, March the 15th, 1960. I am informing you that you are appointed to the rank of inspector. You will take up your duties beginning April 1st next, and should regard yourself as on casual leave during the intervening period. There was a good deal more information in the letter, but newly created Inspector Ghote is unable to read any of it. Tears have come into his eyes. This is the moment he has been hoping for ever since he was old enough to understand what a police officer was. Protima, he managed at last to call out. Wife, wife! Protima, the folds of her sari spread wide by the baby she was soon to give birth to, hurried out from the kitchen. In a moment now he read out the whole of the Commissioner's letter. Think only how proud my father would be today, he exclaimed. If he would be proud, Protima answered, her eyes bright with delight, how much more of proud am I? Husband, if what is here, she patted the rounded shape under her sari, if what is here is a boy, then perhaps he too will one day be following your footsteps. But even so, Ghote went on, heart pounding, even so, my son should not be born in this 100% too small junior officer's flat. No, we must be finding somewhere altogether more right for a full inspector to have. Yes, a flat where I can be having a phone. An officer of detection of crime branch must be in constant touch. But unexpectedly now, Protima failed to throw herself into the plan. She stood there, altogether silent. Then, in a burst of words, she brought it out. It is Hamlet. You had promised and promised to see that film they are at last again showing, 1 week only at Eros. Hamlet! My news was driving it altogether out of my mind. Your favourite play of all. Why did you not remind at once? You were deciding so firmly. We had to go to look for a flat. It was so unlike you. But, he took a deep breath, but I can undecide also, isn't it? A delighted smile swept over Protima's face. Oh, husbandji, in one moment deciding, next undeciding. You who are always and always taking so long to make one only decision. For an instant, Ghote wanted to deny he ever did that, but deep down he knew it was true, or not too far from the truth. No, he said, no, today I have learnt the news I have been wanting to hear all the years of my life. So that must be celebrated. And what better way to do that than go and see the greatest work of the great William Shakespeare? No, tonight we will go to Hamlet. Protima gave a little giggle. Yes, we will go to the film its star is announcing as everybody at college was always quoting same, the story of a man who cannot make up his mind. At that moment there was a knock at the door of the flat. A thumping knock. What? Ghote all but shouted. One of the Jawans from the duty room was there, stiffly at attention, holding out a thin sheet of paper. Ghote took it from his hand. Very good. Dismiss. To Inspector Ghote. Message per telephone from Assistant Commissioner Divika, Crime Branch. You are to visit ASAP Sir Rustam Engineer at his home, 20 Marsban Apartments. And that was all. Of course, Ghote thought, the name of Sir Rustam Engineer is well known to me, the first Indian to hold the post of Commissioner of the Bombay Police. But why am I to see him, Sir Engineer, as soon as possible? Protima was standing just behind him, her face bright with impatient curiosity. He thrust the message out to her. But what about Hamlet? He said. And now Protima did seem to be halted in her tracks, but not for long, though it was on an unexpected note that she began again. "No, this is just like you, my good husband. It is just like your thoughtfulness, only to remember I am so much wanting to see what Mr. Olivier is meaning by the story of a man who cannot make up his mind. But no, you have been asked by head of crime branch itself to visit this Sir Something engineer, and that is why you must go to see him now." Scarcely an hour later, Ghote stood for a moment looking upwards at Masban Apartments on Malabar Hill, that coolest of places in always humid Bombay. It stood there, a sky-reaching, shiningly new building, blessed high above the stewing city. He braced his two bony shoulders, strode up to the glass entrance doors, pushed at them, saw ahead a lift and its smartly white-clothed liftman, and made straight towards him along the length of the gleaming foyer, head held high. "Flat number 20, he said. "I am wishing to see Sir Engineer." "Sir Rustam," the man answered. "It is top floor itself." 2 minutes later, Ghote stepped out of the lift. Two separate large teak doors stood on the far wall of the narrow lobby in which he had found himself. In bright brass figures they proclaimed 20 and 21. Unhesitatingly now, he went over and put a firm finger on the shining white bell button beside the number 20. Almost at once, Sir Rustam's servant drew back the tall door. "It is Inspector Ghote," he said. "Sir Rustam says you may see him, Ekdam." He led the way, almost at a trot, through into the big apartment. Ghote was aware only of walls lined with a sombre green paper decorated with darkly framed photographs of Sir Rustam's ancestors. And then the servant tapped at a tall, polish-gleaming door, and a voice from inside said, "Come!" Sir Rustam was dressed in a plain grey suit and wearing a tie in the subdued colours of some club, the large lens glasses on his long nose betraying the weak eyes afflicting many parsees. He rose from his tall-backed, ornately carved chair and offered a fine, lightly wrinkled, long-fingered hand. "Inspector Ghote," he said, "you are at present on casual leave, I understand." Yes, Sir, Sir Rustam. "I hope you will find what I am asking you to do, though really only a very minor matter, will prove to be rewarding, at least in terms of experience." "Sir?" Sir Rustam sank into his chair. "Then let me, do sit down, old chap, put you in the picture. It would help me if you could make a few inquiries and set my mind at rest. It's like this, Ghote. A good many years ago, while I was still in the rank that you now hold, I was serving as an instructor at the police training school in Nasik, where, incidentally, I am told you did particularly well yourself. I happened there to make the acquaintance of an Englishman, a civil engineer engaged in road building. In the end, we used to go regularly for shikar together, though I admit I am by no means a good shot, and neither was he, incidentally. I gathered that my friend intended, when independence arrived, as it was to do just a few years later, to stay on in India. I had got the impression he came from a rather humbler background than the majority of the English civil servants in the ICS. Sir Rustam for an instant looked up. "You will appreciate that a man like my former friend would see himself as having a much pleasanter life here in India, servants always to hand, etc., than he would have had, he was a bachelor in those days, in some wretched flat in a cheerless England hardly recovered from the effects of war. He succeeded in remaining here under the Indian sun and bought a bungalow in Mahabaleshwar, and indeed for years I heard nothing of him. But then, quite recently, he wrote to me in great distress to say that some weeks ago his much younger wife, of only 2 or 3 years, I understand, and pregnant with their first child, had suddenly and inexplicably committed suicide. The act has left him, it seems, tormented day after day by a need to find out why, and although he does not ask me for help, I think I should offer him what assistance I can. In fact, you, my dear fellow." Ghote was filled with doubts and fears. And you have sent for me, sir," he managed to babble out, to solve this mystery?" "Yes, Inspector. I asked for some intelligent crime branch officer who could be spared for some days, and they have given me you. I dare say he's just been looking at the whole business somehow the wrong way round. Not the sharpest of the sharp, Robert Dawkins. Sir, was she an English lady? Yes, my dear chap. His wife's Christian name, as they say, was apparently Iris, though I don't think I'll trouble you with some of the other things Robert says about her in his letter. Pretty incoherent stuff. Yes, best, I think, to let you find out the facts for yourself. Very good, sir. I hope, when I have been there a few days— He came to a sudden halt. A few days? But what if during those few days the baby is coming? Yes, Dr. Pramash has told Protima that it will be as much as 6-8 weeks before birth is likely. But I have heard stories of a child arriving unexpectedly when the mother is no more than 7 months into pregnancy. Less even. Calculations are not always based on proper facts. But Sir Rustam was prompting him. A few days, you were saying? Sir, I am sorry. Sir, it is just only my wife is expecting our first child, and, sir, I am having at back of mind some worries about it. My dear fellow, that's natural enough. But when is this birth expected? Perhaps we should find someone else to go to Mahabaleshwar. No, sir. No, birth may not be for 6-8 weeks. Sir, I am 100% ready to go. Good. Now, you may need some form of transport up there if your inquiries take you to any of old Dawkins' former haunts. You have a motor? No, sir. No, Sir Rustam, I am not having any car. No problem. Ever since on retirement I acquired for myself an Austin Princess, I have had in the garages here the old Ambassador I used on those occasions when a police vehicle was inappropriate. You can borrow that, Inspector. I imagine it still goes pretty well. And as to petrol and that sort of thing, and the hotel you find up there, I can, of course, let you have here and now whatever you may need. However likely it was that, away in the hill station of Mahabaleshwar, in the cool of the towering Western Ghats, Dawkins Sab's anxieties could quickly be laid to rest, in Bombay, Inspector Ghote's troubles were by no means over. If Protima had taken it well when he had told her they would have to miss seeing Hamlet, she did not take it at all well when he now informed her that he was about to have to leave Bombay for he did not know how long. "No!" she burst out. "No! Think of me, here in this horrible flat, all alone and waiting for the first signs that baby is coming. Who will be there to go down to a telephone to ask Dr. Pramash to come jaldi? But I may not be there in Mahabaleshwar for more than 2-3 days, and Dr. Pramash himself was telling it would be as much as even 2 whole months before anything is expected." "A doctor, you are saying? But Dr. Pramash is not a doctor only. He is a man. How can he be knowing what the woman who is carrying that child must know?" Ghote felt himself, not for the first time in their marriage, up against a wall, high as the sky above. The wall of Protima's knowing what she knew. "And am I not to be allowed now to say what I am wanting? Yesterday was yesterday, today is today." And it was then that it was Ghote's turn for once to explode. "Yes, today is today, and today I am going to Mahabaleshwar, and I must be there as long as my duty is calling for me to be." If Inspector Ghote was exhausted after the long drive from Bombay to Mahabaleshwar, he was doubly so after a restless night on a slack bed at the laughably named Hotel Restful, not helped by the regular chiming of the clock on the Christian church he had seen driving into town. Nevertheless, at precisely 9 a.m. by the church clock, Ghote was examining a garden gate with the board at its top bearing the words Primrose Cottage. Some 20 yards beyond stood the big bungalow, and under a tall deodar tree was a small boy wearing nothing but a raggedy half-pant, crouching at work. The house door. And yes, there is a bell. A sound inside of a prolonged jangling. The door suddenly drawn back. A kansama, Dawkins Sab's house steward, stood there. A pillar of a man. High above his head there rested an elaborately tied orange puggaree. Hastily, Ghote coughed and spoke. "To see Dawkins, sahib. It is Inspector Ghote." A few paces into the interior, the door gently pushed open. "Sahib, it is Inspector Ghote wishing to see." Dawkins sahib was sitting on a fat chintz sofa next to some French windows. He was extraordinarily well-shaved, all but for a bristling little moustache of a fading ginger colour, and a face that, with its set mouth and unmoving, pale-washed blue eyes, made him look firm as a rock, a jutting British rock. "So, Inspector, what's all this about, eh?" "Sir Dawkins sahib, I was sent here to you by your friend who is now called Sir Rustam, engineer, and Sir—" "Good old Rustam. We were good friends, you know. Used to go on shikar with him. Many a fat chital deer fell to our guns those days. So, when I found I was in trouble, it was natural I should drop old Rustam a line. And, he sorted you out for me, did he?" At that moment, Dawkins sahib suddenly jumped to his feet and started wildly looking all round the room. "Specs! Specs!" the little rock shouted. "Where the devil did I put my specs? Always disappearing, damn things!" Ghote could in fact see them quite clearly. They had slipped a little way down between the cushions of the flowers-bright sofa. "Damn servants!" Dawkins sahib shouted now. "One of them must have put the damn thing somewhere. Other day I had to come all the way up from the club when I—" But Ghote was already on his feet, stepping over to the sofa. He rapidly extracted the gold-rimmed glasses. "Sir, it is these you are looking for?" Dawkins wheeled round. "Ah, yes, damn it all. I take it Rustam's put you in the picture and all that?" he said, sitting down again. Ghote swallowed. "Sir Rustam is a busy man. He was not able to give us much time to filling every detail. So, sir, perhaps I am thinking you could tell me full circumstances?" A long moment of blank silence. But at last Dawkins sahib began to produce his account. "Like this, actually. I was over at the club, there most mornings, get a look at the Times of India. Heard the phone ringing, and then one of the club servants brought me a message. I should go back home immediately. A nasty accident. I just thought then that there had been a fire in the kitchen or something. But of course, when I got here, he showed me Iris." He choked and looked down at the fine carpet at his feet. There she was, on the floor, dead, up against the French windows here. Head wound, blood everywhere. Had to get rid of the carpet. My 12 bore beside her, trigger almost in her right hand. Gun's kick must have jerked it free. Suppose she'd fetched it from my study just next door. In a locked cupboard, of course. Imagine Iris must have known where I kept the key." "And where was that, sir?" "What? Oh, of course, in the bedroom, sock drawer." "So your wife could be well knowing where it was?" "Well, could have known. May have been in the room sometimes when I tucked it away, made no secret of it." "Yes, sir, of course." "Mr. Dawkins, I am understanding from Sir Rustam that you have no idea, none whatsoever, why your wife should have done that thing?" "Good God, no, man. She was pregnant, you know. 7 months gone, as they say." "Sir, could there have been something you were saying to Iris memsahib that might, for no good reason, have made her feel some despair?" The rock stayed silent and immobile as a rock. Then at last words issued from it. "It seems that after the appalling thing that has happened, I must put up with every sort of damned impertinence. So I answer once and for all that not one shred of anything passed my lips that could have given my wife, damn it, any reason at all to do that appalling thing." "Very good, sir. I would not ask such a question again." "I should bloody well hope not. Do you think an officer like the chap who came up from the police station here was as bloody insensitive? No, Inspector... what was his name? Darrani, that's it. First-class man, first class. She was born in India, you know. Very quiet, but dashed attractive. Look, I'll show you. Photo I sent her down to Bombay to have taken just after we were married." Abruptly he jumped up and strode over to a heavy roll-top desk on the far wall. In a moment, Dawkins had pulled out from its long drawer a colour photograph in a neatly painted frame. "Look at this photo. I actually had to persuade her to go and have it taken. Shy as a violet she was. Violet eyes, too. And damn it, I fell for her." He thrust the frame into Ghote's hands. Ghote looked. The photograph did not appear to be a very good one. "All right, I can see the colour of those eyes that Dawkins Sahib called violet. They are striking, but something does not seem to be altogether right about them." He took a quick glance at the print at the bottom of the frame. "Photo by 2 Good Clicks, Bombay, telephone 4028, and handed the photo back. For a moment Ghote wondered why it had not been hanging on the wall above the desk. But there was something else lodged in his mind. What Ghote had seen as Dawkins Sahib tugged the drawer open was a thick scattering of what looked like old letters. "Sir," he ventured, "inside that drawer I was seeing what were looking like old letters. Sir, if they were written by your wife, then there may be in them some clues. Or perhaps they are letters written to her. Sir, may I examine?" "No, you may damn well not. Private letters? How dare you?" Ghote winced, but forced himself to look directly at Dawkins Sahib. "Please, Dawkins Sahib, I must be examining your wife's old letters if I am ever to be able to tell you why she—" He stopped abruptly. "Spit it out, man. If you have to stick your damn nose into all her affairs to find that out, well then, you do. Go ahead, damn you." And he turned and strode out of the room. Ghote pulled open the drawer. But there was nothing. There were shopping lists and receipted bills for garments, but nothing that could offer a clue. And then he hit on something. Swiftly he slid it free, straightened it with every care, and read. "Dark bungalow, somewhere off Pune Mahabaleshwar Road. Dearest Iris, well, here we are at yet another temporary resting place. Why ever did I marry a forest officer? But not too bad, the place, actually. Wonderful jungle you can really go for proper walks in. Super wide open clearings, one after another, all within easy reach, and all awash with lantana bushes, masses of tiny flowers. What I want to have is news from you. It's been ages since I have, and I worry about you, you know. A long, long letter, and soon. Your ever-loving Pansy, Pansy Watson." Dark bungalow somewhere off Pune Mahabaleshwar Road. Should I go and track down this lady? Yes. But first I must be seeing Inspector Darrani. Ghote, striving to remember directions for finding the police station as he wrestled with the stiff latch of the garden gate, heard a small voice. "I was seeing Inspector Sahib, seeing all." Peering sharply down between the tall plants, he found the words had come from the small brown boy he had seen earlier. "Seeing? Seeing all? What all were you seeing?" The boy got to his feet, scarcely taller than the brightly blooming red canners all around him. "Inspector, Iris memsahib I was seeing, lying there just after sound of gun." "Lying there? When did you see?" "Inspector, when I was hearing that sound, I was thinking shooting came from inside." "Did you go inside itself?" "No, no, Inspector. I was first looking through windows all round bungalow." "And what did you see?" "Inspector, Iris memsahib with blood all over and on gun also. Saab's gun I was seeing there close to me. And then, Inspector, Kansama was coming into room, and I was jumping back where he could not see. Inspector, Kansama is always ready to beat if he is just only hearing me." "I dare say he is. What is your name?" "Chintu," said the boy. "So, when you were seeing Kansama coming into room, you were first hiding from him, and then going back to where you had been working. Where was that?" "Inspector, it was under deodar tree where it is out of sun." "So, you ran quickly as you could back to the deodar?" "Gee, Inspector, I was quick. When I was hearing shot, that church clock had just only begun its 9 booms and had not finished when I was getting to bungalow." "Right," Ghote said to himself. So now for Inspector Darrani. Despite Mahabaleshwar's relative cool, when Ghote arrived at the police jockey, he was streaked with sweat. And now it was Inspector Darrani, immediately recognizing who his visitor was, who greeted him with the most patronizing of welcoming smiles. "Darrani bhai," Ghote said, "I have been asked by, in fact, Sir Rustam engineer to give Mr. Robert Dawkins some advices." "To give him advice," Darrani promptly corrected him. "That is how it is said in Englishman's English. You ought to remember such, in case you are ever becoming full inspector." But under this put-down, Ghote was able to feel himself unscathed. "Yes, yes," he said. "I am, as one matter of fact, now full inspector myself." He allowed himself a tiny pause in which to take note of Darrani's instantly suppressed reaction, and was not disappointed. They had been together at Nasik Police Training School, where Darrani had first earned the name, well-deserved, of Bully Darrani, soon improved to Bully Boy. He had an unswerving belief that whatever he happened to think could not be other than right, and that everybody else should beyond doubt recognize this. "So, Darrani bhai, what can you tell me about your investigation at Primrose Cottage?" "Nothing to tell," Bully Boy answered with happy calm. "The woman shot herself, can't be any doubt about that. Examination of corpus delicti, not even necessary. Saw to that myself. Can't leave a white woman's body unburied, you know. Would not do at all." Once decided, decided forever. That was Bully Boy. Ghote felt resentment rising fast. "Were you not somewhat astonished that Dawkins' memsahib was able to shoot herself with that 12-bore itself, with its trigger so far away from the muzzle?" "Yes, you might think that. But a woman who has made up her mind to kill herself will do things a lot more extraordinary than you would think possible." "Darrani bhai," Ghote asked, "why do you think Dawkins' memsahib was committing suicide? Why did she do that terrible thing?" Bully Boy slapped his two hands down on the almost empty surface of his desk. "She just did," he said. "That's all there is to it. She took that gun, thrust it up to her face, and shot herself." He shook his head in weary rebuke. "No, Ghote," he said. "You will just have to learn in police work not to ask questions that are having no answer." "Good God, man!" Dawkins shouted when he had hastily looked over the scrawled sheet signed Pansy. "If paying any attention to this endless twaddle is your idea of a thorough investigation, what'll happen to crime in Bombay when you get back there?" "Sir, I am deciding that best chance of finding what was in the mind of your wife when she was taking her terrible decision is to speak to any of her friends from the past. So, sir, can you be informing me who Mrs. Pansy Watson is?" Silence. Ghote waited. But after a few minutes, Dawkins spoke. "Met Iris when I was visiting an old friend, Peter Watson, forest officer, staying on, like me, out in a dark bungalow not far from Pune. Married to this Pansy woman. Drinks before dinner, and in comes this girl. Very quiet, unobtrusive, you might say, but dashed attractive. Like that. Can't stand females who always make a dead set at you. And damn it, I fell for her, though always thought of myself as a bachelor born. Fell for, and in no time at all, married." He stopped abruptly, coughed, and marched out of the room. Gazing after him, Ghote knew immediately he had to find Pansy Watson. But he only got as far as the front path when a familiar voice came up to him. "Inspector Saab, is more?" It was the little servant boy again, Chintu. "Inspector, on day Dawkins' memsahib died, I was hearing bang of gun and running to bungalow." "All right, but if you saw something more, why did you not tell me about it before?" "Saab, I was thinking you would not believe." Ghote sighed. "Then tell, if you must." "Inspector, on that day, the day I was seeing Dawkins' memsahib lying there with gun by her side and blood also, before that was happening, while I was weeding in this bed, I was seeing a man beside the gate there." A man? What sort of a man?
Very, very bad man, Inspector.
And what are you going to tell me next? That this very bad man was carrying one gun, is that it?
No, no, Inspector. Why would I say such a thing? Inspector, he was wearing one many-colours coat.
And that makes him a very bad man?
No, no, Inspector, not that only. But I have not ever seen a man, even young as he was looking, with coat like that.
What kind of coat it was? Was it long? Was it short?
Oh, Inspector, short.
Ghote thought, now I see what the boy means. Yes, this young man, as he is saying, must have been wearing what they are calling in English a blazer.
Inspector, there is more to say how he is bad. His eyes, Inspector.
I suppose he is going to tell me the fellow is having the evil eye, or a heavy squint at very least.
Inspector, I am thinking his two blue eyes were each different. No, I am wrong. One only was different, not same colour as other.
Ghote found himself crediting what Chintu had said, despite the unlikeliness of it. That one eye being only by a little of a different colour rings true. If the boy was just trying to gain favour with me, he would have made those eyes one brown and the other blue, or one green and the other grey, to make his picture of a badmash all the more striking. But no, he is not trying that. Yet is Chintu still trying to get something of kudos by making up this story? Who can tell? But give him what they are calling benefit of doubt. He dug in his pocket, found a small coin, handed it over. All right, I will remember that, young man. Now I am going away, perhaps for some days. But I will be back, so keep your own two eyes open, yes? It took Ghote when at last he felt free to drive to Pune. A good many troublesome hours searching for a dark bungalow somewhere off the Mahabaleshwar road. Dark bungalows were government residences from the Raj, and there were innumerable dark bungalows in the jungle. So it was not until the next afternoon that, halting the little ambassador outside yet another bungalow, he thought he might at last have come to the end of his quest. Outside it he had seen an Englishwoman, a lady in perhaps her late 30s, sensibly dressed in wide-brimmed white sun hat, khaki skirt, and pale blue blouse. She was bending over a raggedy small girl who was crying loudly, and it seemed unstoppably. Somehow hopeful, he approached with caution. The loud howling rang on and on, as did, he realized now, the soothing murmur intended to quiet the weeping girl.
There, it's only a cut on your leg. You calm down, and then I think I can find some nice cool ointment, and perhaps, if you're a very brave girl, a piece of gur. It was the brief mention of that sticky, rough sugar that at last did the trick. Tears ceased. English lady straightened up. Ghote spoke. "Excuse me, madam, but it is Mrs. Watson?" "It is," she answered with a slight frown. "And who are you, may I ask?" "I am Inspector Ghote, Bombay Police." "Bombay Police? Aren't you rather out of your territory, Inspector?" 100% correct, madam. But nevertheless I am here on duty. Madam, it is concerning Mrs. Iris Dawkins." "Iris? What about her?" Ghote realized then that the news of Iris's suicide could not have reached the Watsons. But now, he thought, plunged deep into a pit of embarrassment, it is up to me to be breaking worst of bad news. He breathed deeply in. "Madam, it is my duty, my sad duty, to tell you that Mrs. Iris Dawkins was, just only some weeks ago, committing suicide." There, said. Pansy Watson, still with a hand on the tear-stained little girl's shoulder, lost in an instant all the roses and cream colour of her cheeks, but almost as quickly she recovered herself. "Inspector, are you sure? Sure that Iris committed suicide?" "Madam, there can be no doubts. Madam, it is because of that I am here to inquire into what you are knowing of the state of Mrs. Dawkins' mind." For a moment Pansy Watson said nothing. Then,
Visibly making up her mind what was the best thing to do, she gave her head a little shake.
No, no, Inspector. You mustn't expect me to be able to talk about Iris. Not just now.
Silence. Then a thought was exploding in his head. Madam, excuse me, madam, there is something I must know from you. Madam, you are loving India. You are loving the beauty of the jungle. That branch of purple flowers you are holding now tells me that. You are loving each and every child of India. You are giving germaline and gur also. Pansy Watson looked towards him. She was smiling.
Well, Inspector, you are right, of course. I love everything about extraordinary India. All the beauty, and yes, all the horrors, and the way they are somehow more colourful, more, what shall I say, well, more beautiful than they would be back at home in steady, everyday England. Then, madam, because you are a lady full of feeling, please tell me why in the letter you wrote some time ago to your friend, Mrs. Iris Dawkins, you were saying, I worry about you. Doesn't sound quite my style. Oh, but wait. Yes, I remember. I did say something like, Happy Christmas when it comes. And when it did come, she did answer, though only with a card. One with robins on it. God knows where she found that in Mahabaleshwar. She didn't add much to the printed Happy Christmas, but she did underline happy, and scrawled that she'd write later, though in fact she never did.
Madam, why were you worried about her? Pansy gave Ghote a steady look.
I'm not sure I should tell you this. In fact, I'm sure I shouldn't. But, well, I think you are a man with some sympathy for others. So right, what the heck, I'll go on.
Ghote held his breath.
Very well. The first thing is that Iris Dawkins, née Petersham, was actually born Iris Mountford, the only child of Sir Ronald and Lady Mountford. Sir Ronald was resident adviser to the youngish Rajah of Gopur, and something utterly appalling happened to both of them. They were out on tour together in a remote corner of Gopur, in camp, and one night a frenzied elephant in must trampled right over the Mountford's tent and killed them both outright.
Madam, that is terrible, terrible. Pansy Watson looked at him, the bougainvillea spray trailing in her hand.
If that were only the worst of it, she said.
She stood again in silence for a moment.
Young Iris, she was almost 13, was not in camp with her parents as she might well have been. She was at the residence in Gopur, and was frequently invited to the palace, where she was friends with the Rajah's 2 children, a girl and a boy. But what no one could have foreseen was that the Rajah's boy, a lad much of Iris's age, who was a lot more sexually aware than we in England think of boys of 12 as being. Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you?
Ghote did. He had got there in a single moment. Yes, this son of the Rajah of Gopur, aged 12 only, was having sexual intercourse with the daughter of the resident in Gopur state, also 12 years of age. And she had perhaps become pregnant by him?
Yes, you are right. The baby, a boy, was born in secrecy at St. Agnes Convent. Then, right away, Iris was packed off home to England, having actually seen her baby only once, not even long enough to take in the colour of his skin or his eyes, or anything about him.
This baby boy? Ghote asked. What was happening to him?
Pansy paused and looked at him sharply. The newborn child was simply sent off to Gopur as soon as it was possible. And in England, Iris was semi-adopted by some fairly distant Mountford cousins, people called Petersham.
Ah, I see now how the name changed.
Yes, the name changed. And I must tell you, Iris's circumstances changed too. For the worse. For much the worse. I suppose the Petershams resented being landed with a 13-year-old girl. But they treated her as if she were a cross between a slave and a pariah. Did nothing for her that they could avoid, never sent her to school, just kept totally quiet about her. So, as soon as she was of an age to act independently, she found herself some sort of job, in London, I think, and then moved on from that to something a little better, and when eventually she had collected up enough savings, she came back here, to India, where she had once been happy. Came to us, as a matter of fact. She was hoping to find work, perhaps in Pune. And then she met my husband Peter's rather stodgy friend, Robert Dawkins. "And now what?" Ghote asked himself. "What shall I do? One question I ought still to ask. An unaskable question." He took in a deep breath. "Madam, Iris Dawkins' husband, was he being unfaithful to her?" It would be an answer, the answer to why she did what she did. And Pansy Watson laughed. She actually laughed. "Oh, Inspector, no, not possibly. And not only because he was totally in love with Iris, comically in love with her, though so restrained that I never once saw him actually kissing her in all the time they were here. But no, I don't in fact believe he had ever made love to any other woman in all his life. He just didn't give anyone any feeling of that." "Madam, thank you. If ever Mr. Robert Dawkins' mind is to become once more calm with that mystery of what was in his wife's head being solved, it would be through you. Madam, thank you." Ghote drove away from Pansy Watson's jungle bungalow deep in thought. "Have I," he asked himself, "learnt enough to be able to say, I know now why Iris Dawkins took her own life? Behind her shy-seeming outside there was a woman who, as a young girl, had had a terrible experience. A mind-altering series of shocks, so that in some sudden flood of remembrance she had decided not to bring into a world where such things could happen one more child. Her child. In his mind's eye he saw now that photograph of Iris Memsahib right down to its painted wooden frame. But there was something wrong about the photo. Yes, the violet eyes Dawkins Sahib was so much praising. He brought the car to a halt at the edge of the wide road. What I must do is to drive to the studio of Two Good Clicks. Early next morning, Ghote pushed open the door of Two Good Clicks and heard the bell above it give a single sharp ting. The studio was not particularly large, just a single open floor covered with a heavily patterned carpet. Now, thrusting aside a bright-coloured glass bead curtain at the back, a man appeared. Wildly all over the place, hair dyed blacker than hair ever could be, and perched on a large beak of a nose, a pair of horn-rimmed spectacles. "Mr. Chakrabarti?" Ghote asked. Yes, that is myself, sole proprietor, Two Good Clicks, Bombay's altogether best photographic studio, though I am saying it. Yes, we may not look so posh as some other studios I shall not name, but—" Ghote broke in. "I am Inspector of Police, Ghote by name." "Police? Police? But I have— What I am wanting to know is, do you have copies of photographs taken some time ago of a British lady by the name of Mrs. Iris Dawkins?" He held the wild-haired Bengali firmly in his gaze. "But of course, Inspector, of course I am having copies. It is best practice. Best the prints, Mr. Chakrabarti." The sole proprietor of Two Good Clicks gave Ghote one quick, frightened look, turned, thrust his way back through the jangling, colourful glass bead curtain, and went straight to an ancient chest of drawers. A few minutes later he appeared with a sheaf of photos tied with pink twisted ribbon. Yes, Mr. Chakrabarti announced. "Mrs. Iris Dawkins. There must be 7-8 shots I was taking." "Mr. Chakrabarti, show me those photographs." Glancing at him with a touch of sharp anxiety, the Bengali slid the grimy pink ribbon off the sheaf and handed over the whole small bundle. Ghote looked at the photo, a duplicate of the one Dawkins Sahib had thrust at him. Yes, it was exactly the same. Except, he realized as he looked at it more intently,
It was not. It showed very clearly those violet eyes that had so imprinted themselves on Dawkins Sahib's memory. But now Ghote could see that the eyes were not exactly violet, rather more a deep blue than true violet, and the left one had in it a little triangular shape of what could only be limpid green. He shuffled through the rest of the photographs. Iris Memsahib had been taken in 6 different poses, none of them showing her to better advantage than the one that Dawkins Sahib had paid for. In one she was holding a large teacup in her left hand. She was evidently making a firm effort to appear to be no more than a tranquil British memsahib in exotic India. Yes, Ghote thought, Dawkins Sahib, that rock-like man, has somehow been deluding himself in thinking that his wife was a contented, soft, violet-eyed creature. Dawkins, despite all his thundering white Sahib's assurance, must at heart be a man unsure of himself, willing himself to believe not what was in front of his eyes, but what he is feeling he ought to be seeing. He handed the sheaf back to Mr. Chakrabarti, who, with immense care, rewound his length of dirty pink ribbon crosswise over it. So, Ghote thought, even as far back as that time, was Iris Memsahib not the happy woman she should have been? Would a happy woman send to her friend Pansy Watson, in place of the long letter she had been asked to write, just only a Christmas card with that one word happy quickly underlined? Something to think about, yes. Mr. Chakrabarti, you have been helpful. Thank you. The following day, Ghote found himself once more at Primrose Cottage in front of Dawkins Sahib. He was sitting on the plump sofa, a tray of tea and biscuits by his side. "Good afternoon, Sahib," he said. "I trust you were having pleasant tiffin?" "Tiffin? Tiffin?" the jutting little British rock exclaimed. "What's that got to do with you, Inspector whatever your name was?" "I was inquiring only," Ghote answered, striving not to sound terse. "Were you? And have you anything more to the point to inquire about now?" "Sir, it is not so much inquiring as informing. I have been up to Pune, sir, where at the Dark Bungalow I was seeing Mrs. Pansy Watson." "Pansy? Bit of a gabble-mouth. Trust she didn't tell you more than you should have heard." Ghote swallowed, all but gulped. "Sir, I was learning from Mrs. Pansy Watson about the early life of your wife. Sir, were you knowing she was born in India and lived here for 12, 13 years? Yes, Mrs. Dawkins may have occasionally said something about her childhood in India, but I never took much notice. The sort of India she knew at that age hardly connected with our life here. Sir, your wife, who was the only child of Sir Ronald and Lady Mountford, was—" But now Ghote had told Dawkins Sahib something that had interested him. "Never knew that. Good God! Can you imagine it, my dear chap? A woman like Iris never actually once mentioning that her father was Sir Ronald Mountford. He was the resident in Gopur, you know, the resident. I can hardly—" "You're sure of this, Inspector? Perfectly sure?" "Oh, yes, sir. But, sir, there is more to be telling." "Well, let's hear it then, let's hear it." "But a Mountford! A Mountford! One of the best families in England, you know." "Perhaps she was not telling you she came from such a fine family because when you were meeting her she was going by the name of Petersham, sir, the name of the family in UK, sir, who were adopting her." "Adopting? I never heard anything about adopting. Not a word, not a bloody word." "Sir, they were distant cousins of Sir Mountford, but not at all rich. Mrs. Pansy was telling me they were treating your wife, who was a child only when she came to them, very, very badly. Sir, that may be why she never mentioned same to you." "Dare say you're right. Treated her badly, eh? She certainly never said anything about that to me." "But why was she adopted?" "Sir, one night while Sir Ronald and Lady Mountford were in camp, and in the same tent, in the middle of the night an escaped elephant was trampling them both to death, sir." For a moment or two, Dawkins Sahib sat on his sofa in silence. "Killed, eh?" he said at last. "Sir Ronald Mountford killed. You know, I believe I read about that when it happened. In the Times of India, bound to have been. Sad blow for the whole family. Yes, sad blow. He sat on in a silence that looked every inch reverent. But standing almost at attention in front of him, on his fat little sofa, Ghote knew that the worst, the very worst, had yet to be said. Mrs. Dawkins, aged 13, gave birth to a baby boy. He gritted his teeth to begin. But at that moment there came a knock on the door, a discreet but firm knock. It was the kansama. "Sahib," he announced, opening the door. "Sahib, Inspector Darrani." Bully Boy came striding in, a privileged visitor, without any waiting to know whether his sudden arrival was interrupting any business Dawkins Sahib might be engaged with. "Ah, Darrani," Dawkins greeted Bully Boy. "Just the man. Been hearing some extraordinary things, unbelievable things from Inspector... here. I'd like to have your opinion. Take a pull." Ghote stood, looking at Bully Boy as he pulled a chair forward, trying hard to stamp down the fury he was feeling. What will Bully Boy say and do when he is hearing what I was discovering? The answer came soon enough. Dawkins Sahib had barely finished giving Bully Boy his account of what he had just heard, when Bully Boy delivered his "I am right" verdict. "Forget it!" Forget? Ghote had wanted to snap. But luckily for him, Dawkins Sahib had stepped in. "Forget? I'm not altogether sure what you mean." "Simple enough," Bully Boy replied sharply, in a way that Ghote thought he himself could never have done. "Forget it all. Forget the whole business of your wife's unfortunate death. It's all been dealt with. I dealt with it. Christian burial carried out, so all can be forgotten. No more to be said." Not for the first time in Ghote's relations with Bully Boy, he found himself astonished. How can the fellow say a thing like that? He asked himself. How can he? "Darrani bhai, that will not do," he said. Under the impulse of truth he could not but bring it out. "You cannot just only bury away all this. Why that day did Iris memsahib take the 12-bore and shoot herself? Dawkins Sahib has a right to know, if it can at all be found out. When something like that is happening, it is even more than just only his right. The whole world of order and decency has the right to know." "Always head in sky," Bully Boy declared. "I was with this fellow at Nasik Police Training School, Dawkins Sahib. He was always like that, wanting to know till last drop what is lying behind each and every old crime we were examining. It is nonsense only." Yes, Bully Boy, you were pointing that out, Ghote thought, time and again. But, the thought followed with inescapable logic, Dawkins Sahib will do what Bully Boy tells him to. Yes, Darrani, I think on better consideration you're right. The thing is to forget the whole business. After all, what's done is done. So, stiff upper lip and take it like a man." He turned then to Ghote. "One thing, though, Inspector something. All that stuff you were telling me about, damn it, about my own wife. Well, now I look at it calmly, her being sent home and not well treated does mean something. It means, poor woman, that she was pretty much off her rocker when she did that." Ghote found himself staring at Dawkins Sahib, who sat nodding to himself as though the matter had now been settled. "I have put something into his head," Ghote thought. "I have told him that his wife was not the quiet English memsahib with violet eyes he had asked to marry him. But what has he done with what I told him? He has taken it as an extra reason to put the whole business out of his mind. Finished, he has announced. Finished and done with. She is not ever to be thought about again." Hastily he looked away. What to do now? "Yes, you are right, of course, Dawkins Sahib," Ghote said, low-voiced. Then he turned to go. Standing just outside the house door, Ghote allowed more thoughts about the British rock to slide into his mind. Yes, a weak individual at heart. He had found, however, that in India he had the whole weight of the British Raj there behind him, all the way from the Viceroy down. It had bestowed on him the right to give orders and expect total obedience. As for Bully Boy, he is not at all wanting any more inquiries being made into Iris memsahib's death. He is stating and claiming that it is all wrapped up, his neat parcel in the post. But I am not letting myself believe that there is nothing more to find out about Iris. No, no, I am damn well not. Where to go next? What to do? God knows. And I am damn hungry. I also, like Dawkins Sahib, am wanting some tiffin.
As he made his way back to the Hotel Restful, Ghote found himself thinking once more about what little half-pant Chintu had told him about the young man in the striped blazer. Yes, that fellow was definitely the source of a mystery, something more to be explained by Inspector Bully Boy Darrani, the great explainer away of anything that stood in the way of his instantly formed theories. Bully Boy, with his explanations for everything that happened inside Primrose Cottage on the day the young man stood there looking in over the gate. "Bully Boy!" Ghote exclaimed out loud. "Oh God, if there has been some unaccountable conspicuous figure about anywhere in the whole of Mahabaleshwar, and Chintu's young man in that blazer was well out of place, Bully Boy will have some notion of his existence. So he must be asked. He will have to be. I will have to go to the police station and ask." But leaving the station only a few minutes after getting there, he told himself he need hardly have troubled to come at all. What benefit was it to learn that the youngster Chintu had seen that terrible day had come to Mahabaleshwar from Bombay somewhere? Bully Boy said also that the fellow, whose name, if he knew it, he had not mentioned, is educated. But that is telling me nothing also. And Bully Boy was careful not to tell me if that blazer-wearing young man is still somewhere about Mahabaleshwar. Bully Boy is not at all wanting any more inquiries being made into Iris Memsahib's death. He is stating and claiming it is all wrapped up. But I am not letting myself believe there is nothing more to find out about Iris. No, no, I am damn well not. Early next morning, Ghote was standing outside the Mahabaleshwar Club. He heard the church clock strike 10, squared his shoulders, and walked quickly into the club interior. A spacious hall, its neatly patterned wooden floor exuding a pungent resiny odour, and no one about. Not a member, not a single bearer. Quietly, almost on tiptoe, he advanced deeper into the building. A door bearing a wooden plaque inscribed "Reading Room." Cautiously he opened it. No one. Door closed again. On tiptoe still, penetrating further. Smoking room. Inside, at once evident, the aroma from many past years of cigars, pipes and cigarettes lingering unmistakably. But yes, in the far corner, a human being. Must be, even if he is holding up the broad pages of the Times of India. So the man behind that can be only one person, Dawkins Sahib. Door softly closed, Dawkins Sahib reading on, unaware. And onwards. Dining room. No guests hungrily waiting for, what, mulligatawny soup to be ladled into their bowls. Move on. A door covered in some thick, sound-smothering green material leading to the back premises. And the moment he pushed it open, he saw the khaki and green uniform of a bearer. The fellow was perched on a high stool, simply sitting, and eyes closed, dozing. "Wake up!" With a start that nearly had the bearer toppling off his stool, he came to life. Eyes, or rather, Ghote registered one eye, wide open. The other was a blear-covered, sightless orb. "What?" the fellow said. Who are you?" "One police officer wanting answers." Ji, Sahib." "The truth, the whole plain and simple truth." Sahib, I will give it." "Very well. Then tell me, why is there nobody to be found anywhere in the club?" "But, Sahib, yes, bearers are everywhere, myself also." "Everywhere? I don't think so. It is nowhere. Tell me, is club altogether empty at this quiet time of morning? Only Dawkins Sahib reading Times of India? And why not plenty bearers?"
The one-eyed face in front of him hung down in silent defeat. "So, club is deserted, yes? So what is happening if telephone rings?"
"Oh, Inspector Saab, that is easy. Look and see what is just beside me, here on floor only. Ek telephone."
"Is this one only phone in the club?" he asked, somewhat surprised.
"Gee, Inspector."
"And is it your duty then to sit by this telephone all day and take messages to any member who is wanted?"
"Inspector, who else? I am very good at listening to telephone. Perhaps it is because I have one eye only. From birth, Inspector."
A few minutes later, Ghote, standing beside the long rattan chair on the club's terrace, was gazing with an uplifting sense of wonder at the countryside, when, from somewhere near, there had come a sharp hissing sound. He stopped, puzzled and alerted. And then, from behind the outermost stubby pillar holding up the terrace roof, a head poked out. Chintu's. "What? What are you doing here? Why are you not in the garden at Primrose Cottage?"
"Inspector Saab, I am sliding out under bottom of lock side gate and running here. There is something I must tell."
"Come here. Leave that pillar and come here. If you are having something to tell, tell. And how was it you knew I would be here itself?"
"Inspector, I was seeing from high in the garden the noisiest car in Mahabaleshwar going along the road to club. Fut.
"All right, that is enough." But now, Half-Pan Chintu, although he had brought his almost naked body more fully into view, seemed unwilling to say another word. "Damn it," Ghote thought, "was I being too much of tiger with the boy?" No need to be frightened. I will not eat. So now tell me what it is that made you come all this way." "Well?" Ghote asked.
"Inspector, I was not telling whole thing."
"What whole thing is this?"
"Inspector, the young man."
"So tell."
"Inspector, I was afraid to tell this. I was thinking you would not believe and would no more listen to me. But the young man was doing more than coming in at gate. Inspector, he was going right up to side of bungalow."
"Right up? And in also?"
"No. Yes. No. I am not knowing. I was not able quite to see. I was hearing Mali coming. Whee! That lathi was sounding."
"But I must know," Ghote said to himself. "I must know whether that mystery fellow was truly entering the bungalow. If he was, it will alter the whole business. Chintu, listen carefully. You are well knowing what you saw with your own eyes, that Dawkins memsahib was shot dead. So it is important that you are telling whole truth. When you were down beside bungalow itself, did you truly see the young man in the striped coat go inside house?"
"Inspector, it is truth. It was hard to tell. Mali was coming. I am not knowing if I saw him or not going inside."
"Very well." And then, in a flash, Chintu was no longer there. The terrace was bare of any other human being. "No," Ghote said to himself, "I must not let Chintu disappear like this. He is scared of the Mali and that lathi of his, but I cannot allow him to be vanishing. I must go ekdam to Primrose Cottage, and if I am unable to find, then ask." Half an hour later, after a quick but thorough search of the garden at Primrose Cottage, Ghote went to enlist the help of the Mali.
"That no good brat, Inspector. He has been trouble ever since his father was persuading me to give him job. When I am finding, he will be feeling this lathi I am having in my hand only just now."
"Mali," Ghote asked sharply, "you are knowing his father?"
"That man is no more a friend, I am telling you."
"All right, then tell me where in town he is staying, and I will go and perhaps bring back your boy. He is a hard worker, isn't it?" It needed only for Ghote to snatch away the dangling beedi from the Mali's mouth for an address to be produced. Some luck sometimes must come to me, Ghote reflected, as he found himself face to face with a man who, in answer to his somewhat doubting shout of Chintu's father, emerged from a tumble-down hut made from a few sheets of rusted corrugated iron. "So, you are the father of that clever boy?" he asked.
"Yes, Chintu is clever. All are saying it. But what is making me proud is he is honest also. He was born honest, and he has stayed honest, even when working for that shaitan of a Mali. You are knowing what is my name?"
"No, how could I?"
"It is Satyamurthy."
Ghote at once saw the implication. Satya, truth, and Murthy, mouth. "Yes," he said, "that is meaning truth speaker. So where is Chintu now, you are knowing?"
"He is inside only."
"So why is he not at this very moment working for Dawkins Saab's Mali?" A shrewd look from Chintu's father.
"You are police?"
"Inspector Ghote, Bombay Police," he said, careful to keep any hint of the bully out of his voice. "I want to ask Chintu more about what was taking place some weeks ago at Primrose Cottage."
"That murder?"
"Murder? Why are you saying murder?"
"When a white memsahib with servants always there to do what she is wanting, not ever needing to lift one hand, is being shot dead, isn't it murder, Inspector? Chintu!"
Out into the sunless gloom Chintu came, looking shamefaced. "Chintu, not like you to be running away when I am asking questions, even if hard ones to answer. Tell me only why, over at club, you were running off the way you did." Chintu moved his head from side to side, but produced no words.
"Chintu,"
his father said with an edge of sharpness,
"Inspector Saab is wanting answer to questions. Tell him whatever is truth now." "Ji, Pitaji."
"Then speak."
"Inspector."
The word emerged cautiously, as if a mongoose was putting its nose outside a hole.
"Inspector, Mali said he would give me push from job if I was talking with you."
"But it would not be end of world if you were getting pushed from Primrose Cottage."
"Inspector, Pitaji is having no job himself. He is not able to find, and I have 2-3 brothers also, younger than me."
"But Chintu," Ghote said, "if you were getting one job as a Mali's boy, you could be getting another before long, isn't it?"
"No, Inspector."
"No? Why not? You are one good worker, you know that."
"Yes, Inspector, I am. But it is not Mali only, it is kansama also. And, Inspector, he is saying more than push. He is telling if I am ever seen talking with you, I will have my 2 legs chopped."
"He was saying that? Kansama was saying he would cut off your legs?"
"No, Inspector. Kansama would never do it."
"But—"
"Inspector, it would not be Kansama himself, but he is knowing gundas who would do it, would do that, Inspector, and worse, the very worst." "Inspector," Chintu's father came in, "I was not at all knowing this, but if Chintu is saying it, it is truth. And there are in Mahabaleshwar gundas and badmash men in plenty to do it."
"Oh, yes," Ghote said. "I am altogether ready to believe you. And Chintu also." Ghote paused to think. "Yes," he said. "Let me tell you what to do. Hide Chintu. Hide him where no one will be knowing. You do that, and I will have some words with that kansama. And after that I promise Chintu will keep those 2 fast-running legs of his, as well as his truth-speaking mouth. Yes, I am promising that." Murder, murder most foul as in the best it is. As Ghote left, the words from Hamlet came once more pouncing into his mind. Murder, the word Chintu's father had spoken in unthinking response to a mention of Dawkins' memsahib's death. Murder, the threat to murder that Chintu himself had said might come to him from Dawkins Saab's kansama and the gundas whose services he could buy. That they would cut off his legs, and worse. Can it be so? Yes, of course things like that happen often enough at the hands of gundas. Why should they not happen even in holiday Mahabaleshwar, even out of holidays time in rain-spattered Mahabaleshwar? But Iris Memsahib? Sir Rustam tasked me with finding out why she had killed herself. Dawkins Sahib had written in despair to his long-ago friend, saying he was tormented day after day by a need to find out why his wife had suddenly and inexplicably removed his 12-bore from its locked almirah, put it to her head, and taken her own life, even though she was 7 months pregnant. There was no question of murder. There is no question of murder. But, the kansama, that pillar of a man with his splendid puggaries, why should he have threatened little half-pant Chintu with death? Or was Chintu telling a tale? At once he knew that it was not so. Chintu was a speaker of truth. So why should the kansama have made that vile threat? It must be because of what Chintu might say to myself. Possibly he would give away something that fellow has to keep altogether secret concerning the appalling event that took place that quiet sunny morning, the event that had brought Dawkins Sahib hurrying back home from his contented perusal of the Times of India, to find not some spoilt tiffin, but his wife's body in that pool of blood. Yes, it would have to be that. But now I am still knowing nothing about why Kansama should have threatened Chintu. Should I go now to Primrose Cottage and question that richly clad pillar of a man? No. To do that would simply tell the fellow that Chintu had defied his threat. Then at once he would set his gundas to find him, and there might not have been time to see he was well enough hidden. Then it might not be a question of cutting off legs only. So, nothing at all to do? No, by God, there is something. If really Iris Memsahib was murdered, it would account for what, almost from start itself, has been puzzling to me. How was it that she contrived to put the muzzle of that 12-bore to her head and at the same time get a finger round its trigger? Yes, I had told myself it might be just possible that in the wild state of mind of a woman seeking death, she could perhaps have succeeded in contorting her body enough to have done it. But that was not easy to see, not at all easy. So murder it might be. I will go back to Primrose Cottage and get that dazzlingly pugried kansama to tell me not why he threatened Chintu, but once again what exactly happened that fatal morning. Perhaps, something may emerge from what he is saying. There may be one new detail that is showing that all is not as I have been led to believe. Or, since kansama, I must find out fellow's name, has turned out to be not the 100% respectable figure he was always looking like, there may be something, some little thing he has been keeping back. Ghote decided that he would go to Primrose Cottage in uniform. Now, he said to himself, when I am needing to overawe to 100% that villain of a kansama, a proper police uniform it must be. Someone who can threaten a little mongoose of a boy like Chintu with having his legs cut off will not be an easy man to break. So it was with at least an air of complete confidence that he opened once again the twisted wooden gate of Primrose Cottage. He went then striding up the path beside the canner's bed and gave the bell-pull a single vigorous tug. As he had expected, the jangling sound of the bell inside had hardly ceased when the door was opened. The kansama was there in front of him. Ghote gave him a long, steady look. Yes, he thought, gazing at the magnificent, brightly coloured turban wound round the kansama's head. Yes, the fellow is wearing yet another pugri, a bright blue one. "Kansama," he snapped out, "I am wanting some words with you. Kindly step outside." There was a moment when it looked as if the towering, magnificent man was going to refuse. But without a word he stepped out, even if in closing the door he produced a quietly sulky thud. Ghote took a swift look round. "Yes," he said, "over there, that bench under the peepal tree." Taking care to walk a little behind the tall, pugri-topped figure, Ghote steered him to the spot he had chosen, well away from the bungalow itself, and the minimal possibility that Dawkins Sahib might come out to investigate. At the bench he issued a peremptory, "Sit, sit," and then stationed himself where he could look down at his captive. "Very well. Now, name." Two pale brown eyes stared back at him in astonishment, but not for long. "Kuldip Mudolka." That and no more. No Inspector Saab, no Inspector Ghote, sir. But it was enough. Positions, top dog and underdog had been established. "Now, I am wanting to hear your full account of what you saw after you had heard that shot from Dawkins Saab's gun. So tell." A silence. How long should I let it last? Thought Ghote. Then, "I was in my quarters, and all of a sudden I was hearing close by, that gunshot." "Time? You are not saying what time that was?" "Inspector." Kuldip Mudokar looked up from the bench with now a glint of impudence in his eyes. "A kansama is not someone to have on his wrist one gold watch." "No gold watch whatsoever," Ghote snapped. "No watch of any sort. It would not be fitting." A stir of resentment from the bench. "But," Ghote carried on without stopping, "it is all the same important for you to be knowing what time it is. Time for Saab's Chota Hazri first thing in the morning, time for whatever cup of tea he is taking before he leaves to read Times of India, time for tiffin, time for dinner. So I think you are knowing always what time it is, if not to nearest second, well enough." A distinctly rebellious look from the bench. "And shall I tell you how you are knowing same? You are hearing at each and every hour and half hour the sound of the bell in the English church not so far away. Yes? Yes or no?" "Yes, Inspector, you are right. I am hearing that sound, but it is coming so often each hour and half hour, I am altogether forgetting I am hearing it." "Very well." Ghote noted, not without pleasure, that the imposing puggree-wearing figure whom he had been so struck by when the door of Primrose Cottage had first been opened to him looked now more like a stuffed dummy. "So," he said, "your full account of what happened after you heard the sound of Saab's gun. Nothing left out and nothing put in." "Well?" "Inspector, it was like this. I was in my quarter, and suddenly I was hearing that gunshot. I was knowing at once it was coming from inside. A dacoit, I was thinking. Has some dacoit come into house? At once I was going to see. Inspector, Kuldip Mudolkar is no coward." "Go on." "Inspector, I was hurrying fast as I could to drawing-room, running even." "Oh, yes," said Ghote, "and you were not at all thinking, is it, that if a dacoit was there with a gun, you would be better to approach with care?" A moment to think. Which way to go? To tell this Inspector Detector I am too brave to be careful, or to go back and agree with what he has said? Ghote could almost see the decision being debated this way and that on the man's face. "Truth, Mudolka," he snapped out. "Gee, Inspector. But yes, I was at first running, but then I was thinking, and when I got to closed door of drawing-room, I was opening same slowly. "And you were seeing what? Exactly what?" "Inspector, there was no one there. But lying by French windows there was Dawkins, memsahib. Dead, Inspector." "But you were going over to her to make 100% certain?" "No need, Inspector. I could see it was altogether too late for doctor. The blood, Inspector, it had gushed out when that shot from the gun had entered the head, and the head itself all in pieces, yes, blown to pieces." "But you thought the sound you heard just only moments before was from a dacoit's gun. A bullet, yes, not any pellets from a shotgun." Again a flick of a pause, then a wide shrug of broad shoulders under the bright red buttons-gleaming waistcoat. "Bullet, pellets, not much of difference when they are entering head." "All right, perhaps it was so. Now, what else did you see? Did you see anyone running off?" The question had to be asked. "You were seeing running off a young man wearing some sort of coloured coat, a blazer, yes?" But the moment he had asked the question, Ghote cursed himself for his hastiness. "Never tell a witness anything without carefully deciding whether you will be given the truthful answer. Fool! Idiot!" At once the reply he now knew he was bound to get came glibly from the lips beneath Mudolkar's curled and oiled black moustache. Yes, Inspector, that was who I was seeing. I had altogether forgotten. I had forgotten even when Darrani Sahib was asking me his many questions. But now you have said I am remembering. Yes, it was a young man, and he was wearing one blazer. Defeat, Ghote registered. I can hear it in every syllable of that I am remembering. Fellow is laughing in his sleeves. No going back now to the absolute control he had succeeded in establishing over Mudolkar. The straw-stuffed dummy, hanging there awaiting the crackle of the flames beneath, had been, in one careless moment, changed back into Dawkins Sahib's lofty kansama. He gave Mudolkar a terse, "That will be all." But on his way out of the garden, a thought surfaced. What put it there, it immediately occurred to him, is the way I was describing to myself Mudolkar's restored position, Dawkins Sahib's lofty kansama. That description, at once translated into a picture, has shown me what really makes the man so lofty. It is his pagri. More, it is that the pagri he has had on his head has been, almost each time I have seen, of a different colour, down to the bright blue one, fresh and new-looking also, that I can see at this moment going away round the side of the house. Why should a kansama, any kansama, have more than one pagri to be proud of? Yes, it is the duty of a Sahib, who has decided his dignity requires a kansama to open his door, to equip that impressive servant with a fine turban. But it is not a Sahib's duty to provide more than one pagri. He will have provided just one red waistcoat with plentiful brass buttons, and perhaps just 2 pairs of fine white trousers and one good solid pair of black leather chappals. But that is the limit. The man will need nothing more. Will need nothing more unless the pagri that the kansama has first of all been given had tickled his pride to the point where he is wishing and wishing to have another, one as elaborate but in a new colour, and such a pagri he could not obtain unless he has some sort of a hold over the Sahib who would have to pay the sum necessary. It might be, of course, it just might be, that a master would want to reward years of faithful service by making such a gift. But Dawkins Sahib has not been in Mahabaleshwar all that long. So, Mudolkar must have some hold over Dawkins Sahib. But what hold can that be? Plodding back to Hotel Restful, what else was there to do, Ghote found the riddle had not ceased to rocket back and forth in his head. Step 1. Mudolkar's pagris. Yes, those 4 I was seeing, with my own eyes, no doubt about it. But the conclusion I was drawing from them? Yes, how else could Mudolkar have obtained 4 costly pagris to wear to his own obvious pleasure, except by somehow making his Sahib buy them? Step 2. Mudolkar must really have some hold over Mr. Robert Dawkins, that British rock. But already I was suspecting that Dawkins Sahib was not such a rock. That was so even when, at the first time I was seeing, he was stating he had written to Sir Rustam in sheer desperation. Desperation is not 100% rock-like quality, not at all. So, is it possible, likely even, that Mudolkar has some hold over his Sahib that is letting him extract from that unrock-like rock first one new top-class pagri, then another, and another, and another? Step 3. And this is looking more of difficult. What has Dawkins Sahib done to make him yield to Mudolkar's demands? It must be something that has happened as recently as when he obtained that second pagri. And what has happened quite recently? Answer, Iris Memsahib died from a gunshot. But did she shoot herself with the 12-bore she knew was locked in her husband's gun Almirah? True, she most probably did know also that the key for the Almirah was hidden in her husband's drawer of socks, and so could have found it. But here, Those socks would never have been put into that drawer by the memsahib herself. That would be a servant's task. So it is by no means certain Iris memsahib did know where was that key. If she did not, is there a totally different explanation for what happened? Step 4. Who besides Dawkins Sahib himself, far away at the club reading Times of India when that shot was fired, did know where to find the key to the gun almirah? In theory, it could be the servant whose duty it was to put backwashed socks into the drawer. Or, let me say, the servants who turn by turn may have had that duty. Yet, why should any one of them go to that drawer and take out the key to the gun almirah? Why should they want to shoot Iris memsahib? That is ridiculous. Who, sitting over all the servants, would very likely know also where that key was hidden? The kansama, Kuldip Mudulkar. So could it have been him who took out that 12-bore? It could, of course. But why again should Mudulkar want to shoot Iris memsahib? Can she have found out something about him that would cause her husband to dismiss him? Possible again. But would Mudulkar shoot her in order to stop her telling Dawkins Sahib? No, not at all. Mudulkar is the sort of sly, quick-wit fellow who would produce a story that in no time at all would explain away everything. Puzzle. No, the path I have been following, with whatsoever twists and turns there may have been in it, is leading now directly into some swamp. All I know for certain is that Mudulkar did telephone the club, and as he told Inspector Darrani, he did so to tell his sahib he was needed because a nasty accident had happened. But that evidence I have about those somewhat curious words, a nasty accident, came per Inspector Darrani. At this moment, Ghote simply turned directly round and began to head back, not to Primrose Cottage, but to the Mahabaleshwar Club. At the club, ignoring 3 members chatting on one of the leather sofas along the entrance lobby walls, even passing by the big gong at the far end without a thought of giving it a booming tap, he went striding on. Past the reading room, past the smoking room, past the dining room, until in the very back quarters behind the closed baize door he found, perched up on his high stool, the one-eyed bearer he had spoken to before. On the floor at his feet stood the telephone. Sleeping. Sleeping on duty. But it took less than 2 minutes for the single solid fact he had wished for to come into Ghote's hands. One rough shake saw to it. "I have something to ask," he barked almost into the man's face, as his one good eye blinked dazedly back at him. "It is the inspector who came." "Yes, it is. And now do you remember answering phone when a call came from Primrose Cottage and taking the message to Dawkins Sahib?" More one-eyed blinking. Then, at last, words. "Gee, Inspector, I was taking. "Very well. And are you remembering what was the message you took?" Yes, I am remembering. It is my duty. Kansama was saying, tell Dawkins Sahib there has been a nasty accident. Say he must come home quickly. Kansama speaking." "Those were Kansama's very words?" "Sahib, I am always saying just only what I am hearing." Ghote thought for a moment, and then put a calculated question to the one-eyed man in front of him. "Did you have any other message to take that morning?" A slow, spreading silence. The one-eyed man was laboriously thinking, and at last his head looked upwards. "Gee, Inspector, ek message." "Very well. What was it saying? Tell me the words just as the caller said them." "Letter from London has arrived after all, from Mazavati Tea Company, from London. Shall I open it, or will you come back home? Helen." So, Ghote thought, the one-eyed man on the high stool can be relied on to repeat word for word the messages that came to him through the telephone. The words Mudulkar had said to him had been the very words he had spoken. And they had included that curious phrase, "a nasty accident." Words that an English Sahib might well have said. but not any words that Mudulkar himself would ever have uttered of his own accord. Curious. It is as if they had been spoken by Dawkins Sahib himself, or as if they were the words of a precisely dictated message being simply repeated. Keep it in mind, yes, but one more thing to find out. Now, Ghote said, looking straight into the bearer's one eye, tell me what time was it the message for Dawkins Sahib was coming? A time, Inspector? You must ask Dawkins Sahib what time it was. I am not knowing anything of times. No, Ghote said, I am not thinking you would be wearing any watch, and I am not supposing you can see from where you sit any clock on the wall. But I think you must be hearing at each hour, and half hour also, the sound of the clock at the church not so far away. Boom, boom, boom. Gee, Inspector, boom, 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 always I am hearing. That is how I am knowing when someone will be bringing me a glass of hot tea. Good, good. So once more I am asking, what time was it when that message for Dawkins Sahib was coming? A smile broke on the one-eyed man's chapped and pan-stained red lips. A wide smile. Inspector, it was after the boom-boom clock had sent out 9 booms. After? How long after it was? The one-eyed bearer looked puzzled. Time meant little to him. 10 minutes or 20, they must be almost the same in his enclosed world. But then an answer. Inspector, yes, it was just before 10 booms. Yes, the fellow has told me now what I am needing to know. That message from Mudulkar came just before 10 Ak Emma. Ghote looked the bearer in the eye once more. You are sure? You are certain? Out of that single gummy eye came a look that said clearly, How often must I repeat before you are believing? Head buzzing in a whirl of speculation, Ghote hurried away. The call to Dawkins Sahib with its nasty accident message had come just before 10 o'clock. But if the message was to tell Dawkins Sahib, however tactfully, that his wife had just shot herself, then it should have come only a few minutes after the sound of the shot, and I am knowing from what half-pant Chintu was telling me about how he heard the shot and ran at once down to the house while the church clock was beating out its 9 chimes. Could Chintu have got that wrong? Had it been 10 booms from the clock he had heard? No. If he had begun to run just as the first boom came, then a boy as sharp as Chintu would never have got the sum ringing in his ears wrong. I can trust him for that. So, for whatever reason, when Mudulkar telephoned the club, it was 1 full hour after Iris Memsahib's death. Why was that? Why would he have waited so long? Can I ask him? No, that would be stupid. A fellow as quick-witted as Mudulkar would tell me in a moment any sort of made-up story to account for the hour-long gap. But can that be the reason for the fine pugries? And yes, now I can see better what is that hold Mudulkar has. Can it be that Dawkins Sahib must have gone back to Primrose Cottage much earlier than when he had received that nasty accident message? Yes, I think I can guess why. His specs, the glasses he would need to read the paper, the glasses he must have left, as he often did, in the sofa at the cottage. And if so, what might he have seen as he hurried past the sewing-room window on the way to front door? Not that there had been a fire in the kitchen and he would get no tiffin. No, something else. Was it the sight of his wife in close conversation, or even more than that, with the young man in the striped blazer? But path from club to house goes only past sewing-room window, and body was found in drawing-room by French windows. Perhaps Iris Memsahib was killed in sewing-room, and body moved? What if that young man had already entered Primrose Cottage? What if Dawkins saw the two of them perhaps sitting close together in the sewing-room, even on the cot Iris had there for when, in the heat of the day, she wanted to rest? Of course, the young man may have been no more than That what? Perhaps some salesman hoping to persuade the memsahib to buy something costly for the house. A young man simply doing his job. But if this was so, would she even have taken him into her sewing room? I am thinking she would not. She would have had no reason to do it, none at all. So... A thought came suddenly into his head. It was of the sad and sordid story Pansy Watson had told him of what had happened to Iris Mountford when at the age of 12 she had been found to be pregnant by the son of the Rajah, and after the birth of a baby boy had been hustled off to a cold and unwelcoming England. A baby boy who, if he is still alive, must be only some 12 years younger than herself. Chintu's description of a young man slid back then into his mind. A young man wearing a colourful striped blazer. Could it be? But there is more, surely. The photograph. At 2 good clicks I was looking at that better print. I was able to see then that in Iris Dawkins' left eye there was a tiny triangle of green spoiling the deep colour. And Chintu said he believed the young man at the gate was a badmash because his 2 eyes were not just the same. Just like those of Iris Dawkins, Iris Petersham, Iris Mountford. So, can I say that the young man who entered the garden at Primrose Cottage on the day Iris Dawkins died was none other than the son she had at the age of 13 in St. Agnes Convent, Pune? Ghote stood at the foot of the steps leading down from the club. But he was no longer seeing the wide-spreading view of the countryside in front of him. The much-talked-of sight might not have been there at all. Nothing was in his head but a possible explanation for everything that had happened on the day Iris Dawkins had died. So now, what actually took place that morning? Did Dawkins Sahib see Iris in her sewing room at the least holding an unknown young man's hands between her own? Or perhaps even patting him on his cheek? Or perhaps tightly embracing him? And then? Could it have been that Robert Dawkins, overwhelmed with fury under his shakily rock-like exterior, had turned round and pelted along to the French windows, entered the house through them, had then hurried on into his study, hurled himself at the gun Almirah, had found it naturally locked, had gone then stamping and crashing into the bedroom, had jerked open that drawer where his many socks were kept, had in an instant dug the gun Almirah key out from under the pile of neatly folded patching pears, had raced back to the Almirah, opened it, seized the 12-bore, tugged out a cartridge from its box, pushed it into the gun's breech, and then had rushed into his wife's sewing room, determined to shoot down the man he saw as her lover? Who, hearing all the noise outside the room, would, at his new-found mother's urging, have scrambled out of the window and run off as fast as he could, believing Iris would be able to explain who he was. But before she had managed to utter a single word, had Dawkins brought up his gun and shot her in the head? If so, what then had happened? Answer. Think of the telephone call to the club, the call that had sent him hurrying back home, seemingly to be told by Mudulka that his wife had shot herself with his own 12-bore. Why had Mudulkar made that call, as I have hard evidence that he did? Answer again. Quite simply, in order to provide his Sahib with that alibi. The alibi swiftly put together by the 2 of them. Dawkins supplying those words, a nasty accident, when coming home to look for his once again lost spectacles he had seen through the sewing-room window as he was hurrying across the garden, his wife, seemingly in the arms of an unknown man, had seized his gun and killed not the intruder he had wanted to blast to death, but the wife he had thought equally guilty. It must have been, now I think about it, Kuldeep Mudulkar, the ruthless and sharp-witted, who had seen that an alibi could be produced, if his Sahib had some luck in getting back to the club with his short absence there not remarked on. as he would have been able to do at that hour of the morning when all the bearers knew he was accustomed to sit there alone in the reading room with the Times of India, not to be disturbed. And it would have been the toweringly strong kansama who, to have made that alibi doubly likely, must have lugged the guts into the neighbour room. He must have swiftly carried that body, slight enough though 7 months pregnant, away from the scene of the crime to a more likely place for someone other than Dawkins Sahib to have shot her. And there had Mudulka contrived to smear out more blood for Inspector Darrani to see? All right, he must straightway afterwards have cleaned up, as best he could, the blood spilt, not near the drawing-room French windows for all to see, but in Iris Dawkins' sewing-room. Now, I need proof of every bit of what happened as I can possibly get. Once again, Inspector Ghote walked up the path to Primrose Cottage and gave a tug to the bell-pull. And once again, there almost at once was Mudulka in his magnificent uniform with, yes, puggree surely yet another colour, this one sun-brilliant yellow. "Dawkins Sahib is at home?" Ghote asked. "I am wishing to see for some moments only." Dawkins Sahib was having his tea, the large cup in his right hand wispily steaming, a plate of biscuits at his elbow half consumed. "Inspector? Well, what can I do for you?" Rapidly, so as not to leave time for much consideration, Ghote put his request to be allowed to go round the bungalow, putting to bearers, etc., some extra questions I have thought of. "Very well, I suppose so, if you think it's necessary." Leaving with unobtrusive quickness, Ghote then began his round, putting to each bearer and each maid that he came across his single question. "You are remembering day when Dawkins memsahib was shot?" And each one of them in turn echoed the answer the first bearer gave. "Ji haan, Inspector, who could forget?" "You are remembering even just where you were when that sound came of a gun being fired?" "I was here itself, Inspector, at this spot only. I had not taken away breakfast dishes till then." It was eventually, as the church clock boomed out the half-hour after 5, that for the last time he asked of a rough-handed girl from the kitchen his unvarying question. The answer he got, exactly the same as all the others, confirmed, he felt, the first piece of the extra proof he had set out to check on. The shot that had killed Iris Dawkins had been fired shortly after 9 a.m. One other thing to be done, however. I must walk exactly the same path Dawkins Sahib must have taken from the moment that, through the window of his wife's sewing-room, he saw her in close proximity to a stranger dressed in a dazzling blazer, to the young man who was, in fact, her own son. But how to do it when Dawkins Sahib himself is inside the bungalow? His dilemma was instantly solved. The door behind him opened, and Robert Dawkins came out. "Ah, it's you, Inspector, still here?" "Yes, sir. Yes, I am just only taking a little time to think whether I have done everything I ought to have done." "Very good, very good. Nothing I can tell you, I suppose. Just off to the club. Like nowadays to give myself a drink at the bar about this time." "Yes, sir." "No, sir. No, there is nothing I would be needing from you." So, Dawkins Sahib, all unknowing of what I am thinking about him, has gone to the Mahabaleshwar Club in what must be his usual way since the death of his wife. So, now to work. Will the movements back and forth that Dawkins must have made that day, from the moment he saw what he had seen until the moment he squeezed the trigger of his 12-bore, take more of time than would fit the outline I have in my head? Quickly Ghote walked, almost ran, round the outside of the bungalow, past the French windows, and on to the window of the sewing-room. There he stood peering in, trying to imagine what Robert Dawkins' thoughts would have been had he seen his wife with an unknown man. It is surely altogether likely that such a mother would have clasped her new-found child, however little of a child he now is, hard to her bosom. And if so, it is almost as likely that Robert Dawkins, the man who for most of his life had not dared to find himself a bride, would be utterly shocked at the falling away of all that he had come to believe his pregnant wife was. He would then surely have thought of the gun locked away in an almirah in the room just next to the one he was staring into. But yes, now I must enter the house myself. So Ghote went back into the house and into the study, where he stood in front of the tall, polished almirah. Then I must, imagining Dawkins remembering where its key should be kept, go at a rush over to the door here, and I must do what he did, open this door a crack, peer out, no one in sight, quickly across to the bedroom. In a few seconds he was tugging at the wardrobe's left-hand brass handle. Right, it is unlocked, if ever it is locked. Swing both dark rosewood doors wide. And yes, it is the top drawer below the shelf where the socks are most likely to be. A jerk to open it, and here they are. However many pairs of socks does a white sahib think he has to have? Never mind, dip in. And aha! At once the touch of something metallic, a key, a small brass one, just right for an old almirah. Seize it, turn round. I am Robert Dawkins in a towering, blotting-out rage, and out of the bedroom in 3-4 seconds only. Into the study again and over to the almirah, key into keyhole. Would his hands have been shaking? Allow a moment for that. Turn key, tug door open by it. And in a neat wooden holder made to fit a gun barrel, here it is. The weapon. The 12-bore. The very gun that killed Iris. Take it out? Why not? Telltale prints on it long ago wiped away. By the man who had used to shoot his wife? By ever-helpful Mudulkar? No matter. And I must be off. No, forgotten to load the weapon. But yes, that little drawer on the almirah's other side should be the one. It is. Open it. And still there, a small, thick cardboard box. Take off lid. And still in place, 2 neat rows of red-colored cartridges, with a gap where one has been taken out. A single one. The cartridge, it must be, that sent its load of heavy little pellets into Iris Dawkins' head. No time for thinking now. Shove cartridge into gun's breech. Have I been as quick as Dawkins would have been? Yes, though I have never loaded a gun like this, I have been quick. Forgetting his timetable for the moment, Ghote unloaded the 12-bore and replaced it in the almirah. Then, moving quickly back to the door, a virtual 12-bore held strictly in imagination in both hands, he went at a loping run along the passage and up to the sewing-room door. There he paused for a second, trying to work out what Robert Dawkins, armed, would have had to do to open the door in front of him. All right, imitate that. Imaginary gun swung downwards from his imaginary gripping right hand. He could almost summon up the impetuous fury that must have driven Robert Dawkins. The knob did not turn. What the hell must I do? Dawkins, what would he have done? What he would have to do is put the gun down so as to get a good right-handed grip on the obstinate knob. Ah, yes, like this. He stooped, laid the imagined 12-bore carefully on the bare polished wood of the passage floor. Yes, Dawkins would have wanted to make not the least noise to disturb the guilty pair. So, turn that stiff knob with my full force, fling the door wide, and go crashing into the empty room on the far side. But the door stayed shut. He pushed at it and pushed. What was keeping the door closed? There was no keyhole beside the knob, so there must be a bolt of some sort on the far side. There must be someone in there, someone to have closed the bolt when they shut the door behind them. But who? Can it be Dawkins Sahib himself inside there, come back again suddenly from the club? So, what to do? For what seemed like long minutes he stood there, the imagined 12-bore on the floor at his feet, and tried to come to a decision. Knock on the door and call out who's there? But what if Dawkins Sahib answers, "Yes, yes, damn you, what do you want with me?" What if no murder took place in this room? What if there had never been a young intruder clasping in his arms Iris Dawkins? Then I would be falsely accusing an innocent man of murder. And not just an innocent man, but an innocent white Sahib. And white Sahib still, after all the time that has passed since they were rulers in India, are people of influence, people who must not be offended by a simple police officer. My career in ruins, ruins! Why, oh, why is it so hard so often to decide what to do? From inside, suddenly he heard the click of a bolt being snapped back. The door was in a moment opened wide, and Kuldip Mudulkar stood there in the full authority of his magnificent kansama's uniform, from glitteringly polished black chappals to sun-yellow puggaree. "It is Inspector Ghote," he said, with surely a hint of mockery. Mudulkar and Ghote stared at each other. This is the man, Ghote thought, I am seeing as some kind of accomplice in the murder of Iris Dawkins. And more, he is a man who has gundas ready for a small price to hack off a boy's legs, or ready, if paid enough, to kill an unarmed off-duty police officer who is finding out more than he was expected to. Then Ghote realized what he must do. Take the initiative. "What were you doing in there, Mudulkar?" he barked out. "What were you doing that was so secret you must be bolting the door?" "Nothing, Inspector, nothing." It was feeble as could be. "Nothing, is it? Then tell me, please, what exactly was that nothing?" Mudulkar's eyes shifted from side to side. "Inspector," he said, "I was suddenly remembering that no servant had been in the room since—" "Since when? Since, I am thinking, Iris Memsahib was shot in there?" "But yes, Inspector, after that had happened—" He came to an abrupt stop, looked now from side to side, as if seeking from somewhere some possible reason why he had let himself agree that the sewing-room itself was the scene of Iris's murder. "But why now were you inside?" Ghote went on, seeing a broad path opening in front of him, knowing as he did now that Iris Dawkins had indeed been shot by her enraged husband in the sewing-room. No answer. "Are you forgetting I am a police officer authorized to question?" Ghote said. "I have put one question to you. I require one answer. Why were you in that room there with the door bolted also?" "Inspector, Yes, I was looking for something." "Do better than that, Mudulkar, while you still have the chance." "Inspector, I was thinking when that young man who was in there, hearing some noises, was getting out of window and running off, he was leaving behind part of a letter. A letter I have seen." "Ah, running off. He was running off, is it, on the day Iris Memsahib was shot dead?" "Inspector, when I was in here before—" He jerked his head back towards the sewing-room behind him, and failed to go on. "Yes? When you were in there washing blood from floor, after you had told your Saab he should go back again to the club, while you took Iris Memsahib's body to where Inspector Darrani would see when he was coming? What then?" It was plain that Mudulkar had given up now any attempt to hide the truth about what had happened that distant day. He stood there, simply accepting what was said to him. Then, Inspector," he answered at last, "then it was when I was just seeing on the floor one scrap paper." "So, you had come back in here when you were suddenly remembering that scrap of paper, because you thought this policewala from Bombay might find that paper scrap and learn from same what whole letter was saying?" "Ji ha, Saab." "Yes. So tell me now, what did it say? Do not try to make me believe you were not reading same." "Inspector, I was not able to read. That fellow who was in here must have snatched just as he went out of window, leaving only top itself torn off. But top itself I was seeing when I was washing floor. It was letter from Raja of Gopur, Inspector. One line I saw in own handwriting, telling something to Mrs. Iris Dawkins." "What do you mean?" "Inspector, that one scrap paper had on it address Gopur Palace and Raja's name also. And it was beginning something like, 'Dear Mrs. Dawkins, this is to say that my grandson Ram, last of all the Gopur line is—' And then, Inspector, the sheet was torn. That son Ram was snatching same before he was running off." "But you are sure of this? Sure that the words, in English was it, you were seeing were exactly as you told?" "Ji ha, Inspector, and I am able to tell you why. Tell then.
Inspector, Raja of Gopur has now sent his Devan to Mahabaleshwar. He is staying at Regal Hotel itself, and he is asking and asking questions about
his grandson. Ghote finished Mudulkar's sentence for him. And how are you knowing this?
Inspector Darrani.
The two words were all the explanation Ghote needed. He guessed what must have happened. Bully Boy, who made it his business to know everything that happened in Mahabaleshwar, had found the young watcher at Primrose Cottage. He had questioned him, and learnt he was the lost grandson of the wealthy Raja of Gopur. An old man by now, who must have wanted to be reunited with this last of his line, however much of British blood was in his veins, so that the line of rulers of Gopur could go on down the years. Bully Boy must be all eagerness to provide the wealthy Raja with that help. But he will want to make the Devan go on searching so that the reward when at last the missing heir is produced will be all the greater. Altogether Bully Boy style. Ghote stood in silence for some moments, trying to make up his mind as to what his best course now must be. Very good, Mudulkar, he said, looking the tall kansama full in the face. I am going now to telephone Inspector Darrani. I will ask him to come here and question you about what you were telling me. I then fully expect him to arrest you on a charge of abetment under Indian Penal Code, Section 108. Bully Boy Darrani did not like it, but faced with Ghote's threat to put in front of the former Commissioner of Bombay Police, still a man of influence in every state in the nation, the facts he knew about how disgracefully Iris Dawkins' death had been investigated, there was nothing else for Bully Boy to do. Oh, if you are insisting, then of course I will come for whatever reason you are having. So, barely 10 minutes later, there had come the familiar roar of his blue truck, and the man himself stepped out of it. Inspector Darrani, Ghote said, meeting him at the gate, you have made very, very good time. When I see a thing needs to be done, Bully Boy replied, I am not sitting on my bottom and thinking about it, like some people I could name. I am jumping up and doing it. Good, Ghote answered. He led Bully Boy into the sewing room. Mudulkar, he said in a voice defying disobedience, go and stand in that corner there, facing us at this table. With one swift tug, he pulled Iris Dawkins' work table out into the middle of the room and swung a chair to it for Bully Boy to sit on. I'll get you some paper, Darrani Bhai, he said then. You will need to make good notes. Never made a note in my life. Nevertheless, Inspector, since this is a matter involving something yet more serious than the Section 108 offence Mudulkar here will shortly be facing, I think you had better make notes, and in full. He took a handful of the never-used rose-pink writing paper from Iris Dawkins' pretty little feminine bureau, and put it in front of his fellow inspector. Bully Boy tugged from the top pocket of his uniform a blue ballpoint. I was following up, Ghote continued, some thoughts I had been having about what might have happened that day when, I think you may not have known this, Inspector, when Dawkins Sahib over at the Mahabaleshwar Club, about to read in his usual manner Times of India, found he had left behind here his specs. Coming back to Primrose Cottage, Dawkins Sahib was looking into sewing-room window, and what he was seeing there made him, I believe, go rushing for the gun he kept in the almirah in his study. A quick glance across from where he was standing at Bully Boy's shoulder over to Mudulkar, back braced hard into his corner. Good. No attempt to challenge any of that. Then, point by point, he went through his reconstruction of Dawkins Sahib's actions. In through those French windows, on into Dawkins Sahib's study, and over to the almirah there, finding it locked, as Dawkins Sahib had done. I was going to the bedroom like himself, and locating the key still under his many pairs of socks. Returning to the almirah, I opened it and took from it what I was finding, surprised that a murder weapon had not been kept as evidence, but had just only been returned to its accustomed place. And yes, the capped blue ballpoint now suddenly ground down on the pile of rose-pink writing paper. Good. Then I was going, hurrying with some amount of noise, along to sewing-room. But there I was finding its door tight shut, in fact, bolted. But I was able finally to make the person who had locked himself in there come out. It was this man here, Kuldip Mudulkar. He glanced now from Bully Boy, who was holding himself still as a carved statue, to the kansama, looking, no other word, daggers. "So, now, Darrani Bhai, if you will take cap off your ballpoint, it will be time for those notes you said you would make." Ballpoint's cap tugged off with unnecessary violence. "First question I was asking, what were you doing inside there with door bolted also?" "But here it was that you were making your mistake, isn't it, Mudolkar?" Silence in the corner. Furious silence. "Next, I was asking not once but more than once why you, Mudolkar, were now in that room at all. And at last you were answering. You were, you said, looking for a piece from a letter. You have made your note, Inspector?" Bully Boy looked up. "A letter? What letter, for God's sake? Who cares about some letter?" "Oh, a letter from Gopur Palace and Raja's name also." "I am not needing to make any note of that," Bully Boy said. "I am well knowing Raja's Devan is here in Mahabaleshwar, and what he is doing also." "Yes, that I had thought," Ghote said. "But are you seeing the Devan searching for that young man is meaning that the person you have been knowing about for so long, Darrani Bhai, knowing about, and not at all telling myself, is the son who was born to the 13-year-old girl who was becoming, long after, the wife of Dawkins Sahib." Bully Boy let his ballpoint drop on the dark surface of Iris Dawkins' sturdy work table. Ghote looked at him. A new thought had entered his head. Cautiously he produced it, on tenterhooks, to see if Bully Boy would snap up the half-concealed bait it had occurred to him to offer. "And this young man," he said, "being the son of Iris and not at all her lover, is something that may, if Dawkins Sahib in court is having one clever pleader, produce a verdict that is coming not under Section 302, but under Section 304, just only culpable homicide not amounting to murder." "Then," Bully Boy said. Yes, slowly he is working out what that might mean, not just for Dawkins, but for himself as well. He urged him onwards. "Then you will be seeing, Darrani Bhai, that no one will be too much worrying if the investigation was not carried out to high standard. About that I will be consulting Sir Rustam engineer, when in some hours only I will be seeing him in Bombay. Perhaps all I will need to be mentioning about yourself is that it has been you who arrested this fellow here." "Yes," Bully Boy said. It was a word that seemed to Ghote sweet as the sweetest Alfonso mango. For a moment or two he left him to digest the bitter pill he had just been made to swallow. Then he said, "I am thinking you can take him away now, Inspector, of course fully under arrest." "Kindly do not try to be teaching an officer senior to yourself what is his business," Bully Boy snapped back. Then he stood up, faced Mudolkar in all his now battered glory, and bounced out the words of the charge. A couple of minutes later, Ghote stood there at the side of the road, watching Bully Boy drive away, sending up behind him a tremendous cloud of dust. Mudolkar was now safely fastened to a pair of handcuffs hanging from one of the bars installed on the truck's sides. Ghote turned and slowly made his way back into the bungalow. And while his thoughts still lingered, there came a violent, unexpected shock, the sharp bark of a gun, loud, almost as if it was beside him in the hall itself. For an instant, Ghote stood, frozen in shock. Then he realized where the sound of the gunshot had come from Iris Dawkins' sewing room. In seconds he was there, confronting once again the blankly shut door. A twist of the knob, a thrust, and as, somehow he had known it would be, there lay the body of Robert Dawkins, the man who had, in this very place, killed the wife he had believed was being unfaithful to him. Yes, of course. Dawkins came back from the club earlier than I thought he would, had come back and seen Mudolkar at the garden gate being led off by Darrani and myself, and handcuffed to the bar in Bully Boy's truck. In an instant he must have realized that his own crime was known to the intrusive police inspector from Bombay. And then he would have had time. He had got the same gun with which he had killed his wife and had shot himself in the place she had died. Had done at last what a white sahib was expected to do, the decent thing. Rising smoothly up in the softly gleaming steel-walled lift on its way to Marsban Apartments flats 20 and 21, Inspector Ghote, the silent and attentive liftman at his side, felt the muscles of his stomach tightening and tightening. What if I am unable to convince Sir Rustam that what I have discovered in Mahabaleshwar is the truth? What if Sir Rustam barks at me, impossible, tells me that his friend Robert Dawkins must have killed himself because he could not endure thinking that his beloved wife had done the same thing? What if... The lift came to a halt, quietly as a bird alighting on a tree branch. "This is floor for flat 20, sahib, flat 21 also." He saw the lift doors part in front of him. He took a hasty step forward. Then he pulled himself more upright and squared his bony shoulders. No, he instructed himself. No, Sir Rustam would know that Robert Dawkins, for all the sharply commanding manner he had borrowed from the best of his fellow British sahibs, was inside nothing like them. He would have been not a little surprised, all these years later, to get that letter from Dawkins telling of his torment about what could have made his new wife, pregnant with his first child, commit suicide. Oh, God! My wife, Protima! Should I have gone to find her before I was at all coming here? Protima is just as advanced in her pregnancy as Iris Dawkins was. No, more advanced, more. But I am a police officer on duty, under the orders of ex-Commissioner Sir Rustam Engineer. It is to him I must be reporting. Ghote took 2 long strides to where, beside the heavy teak door with the number 20 brightly shining in polished brass on it, there was the bell with its fat button. He gulped, and put a firm finger on that button. From inside came a discreet buzz, and almost as if that sound itself had operated some mechanical device, the door swung open, and Sir Rustam's servant was standing there. "To see Sir Rustam, Inspector Ghote." And, not for the first time, he hugged that title to himself. "Yes, I am Inspector Ghote, and I have been chosen to join Crime Branch, the topmost unit in the whole of the Bombay police." "You were coming once before," the servant said. "I will see if Sir Rustam is available. Kindly step inside." The servant, a green-checked towel across his left shoulder today, walked unhurriedly away along the corridor Ghote so vividly remembered, its Parsi dignitaries of old, each in his tall black-lacquered traditional hat, looking down at him. The gale in his head suddenly hushed. A moment later, the servant, feet noiseless on the carpeted corridor, had reappeared. "Sir Rustam will see you now itself," he said. Sir Rustam was looking exactly the same. Grey-suited, large spectacles on his long nose, hands, age-marked and long-fingered, gripping the armrests of his tall, ornately carved chair. "Ah, Ghote! Come in. Take a chair. Pull up that one there. You'll find it comfortable. And tell me what you've discovered about that unfortunate business in Mahabaleshwar." Ghote hesitated over taking up the offer of that comfortable, equally finely carved chair. When he is hearing what I must tell him, will he want instead to have me standing at attention in front of him, as if I was appearing on a charge of insubordination itself? But he pulled the chair an inch or two forward, seated himself, crossed his legs, and hastily uncrossed them. Sir Rustam gave him another encouraging smile. "Now, tell me all about it," he said. Sir, what it is I have to tell is not... Sir, it may not be what you are wanting to hear." "Very well. I've spent a lifetime hearing things I don't want to, so one more, if it's as you say, will do me no harm." "Sir, I have to inform that Mrs. Iris Dawkins was not committing suicide. Sir, Mrs. Dawkins was murdered. Sir Rustam sat a tiny bit more upright. "Well, Inspector," he said, "you will have to go some way in justifying that. Who was it who murdered the lady? You know?" "Sir, I do." "Sir, it was Mr. Robert Dawkins himself." Now Sir Rustam sat in silence. Thought after thought went racing through Ghote's head. Now I have said it. Now he will get up from his chair, look down at me, and say that word that I was thinking he would. Impossible. But it is not at all impossible. It was happening. I found it out. Robert Dawkins, White Sahib, blind with rage, seized his 12-bore gun and shot the wife who, he believed, had totally betrayed the iron-rigid trust he had placed in her, had shot her in the face to blot her out forever. "Sir Rustam," Ghote burst out, "Sir Rustam, please be thinking. You must be knowing what truly like was Robert Dawkins, that howsoever much he was behaving like a White Sahib, he was not such a man. He was, sir, a man who would tell lies to make himself seem something of bigger. Sir, in course of investigations at Mahabaleshwar, I met Mrs. Watson. It was at her dark bungalow that Mr. Robert Dawkins was seeing for first time Miss Iris Petersham, as she was then, and was at once falling in love with, sir, with what he was seeing as her violet eyes. But Iris Petersham's eyes were not pure violet. They were only a dark blue, though not without beauty." "Steady on, Inspector. I'm afraid you're beginning to lose me. What's this about violet eyes?" Ghote took a deep breath and began to recount the events in Mahabaleshwar as he had uncovered them to now stern-faced Sir Rustam. At the end, Sir Rustam sat for a moment or two, thoughts plainly jostling through his head. "But do you know," he said at last, "did you find out what must have unloosed that rage in Dawkins? And did you, or did some officer in Mahabaleshwar with proper powers, arrest him?" "No, sir. It was not necessary to arrest Robert Dawkins. Sir, he was administering to himself the death penalty. Sir, with the same gun that he had shot his wife. In the same place that her death took place, he was putting that gun to his head and pressing trigger." "Yes, poor fellow, not up to anything he had undertaken. And he knew, did he, that what he had done had been brought to light?" Yes, sir. He was seeing, nobody was knowing he was there, his accomplice, the kansama, being taken away in handcuffs. I am supposing this was what made him take up that 12-bore of his. Yes, sir." Good. A fine piece of investigation, Inspector. Very good work." Ghote felt a rosily warm glow spread all through him. At once to be checked. It was not true that he should have the full credit for finding out how Iris Memsahib died. There was someone else also. "Well, sir," he said, "I must admit I did also have some most useful assistance." "From some more junior officer at the Mahabaleshwar station?" Ghote, seeing for an instant Bully Boy sitting at his desk, almost grinned. "No, sir, not any police officer. It was, as a matter of fact, the very sharp-eyed little Mali's boy at Primrose Cottage itself, one Chintu by name. He had noticed one day that a young stranger he had seen at the garden gate had eyes of different colour, sir." "Ah, Iris Dawkins' child, the disinherited son of the Raja of Gopur." "And," Ghote went on, "when Chintu told me Kansama had threatened to chop his legs off if he spoke to me, I knew that he must know something else, something that, in fact, he did not know he knew himself." "And what was that, Inspector?" "He told me he had seen Iris Memsahib's body through a window only a few seconds after the shot. But what he did not say was which window. In fact, he must have seen her body in sewing room, because Kansama would not yet have had time to move it. That was what he knew and did not know he knew. And that is what gave me idea about sewing room." "And that sharp young fellow has been suitably rewarded, I hope?" "He can be, sir, with your assistance." "He shall have it. My duty at the very least. As it so happens, a cousin of mine is setting up a strawberry jam factory just outside Mahabaleshwar. It seems to me that to have a bright lad like your Chintu there at my cousin's elbow, he's not altogether bright himself, might be rather a good idea." "It would be a most wonderful thing, sir," Ghote said. "But tell me, Inspector, why do you think Dawkins wrote me that letter when he knew that it was not suicide?" "I cannot say, sir, but perhaps because he wanted to appear to behave like a man whose wife has done that most terrible thing. Perhaps because he needed to believe it himself. But most certainly he did not expect you to act like true friend after all those years and send help."
Sir Rustam smiled and spoke.
"Very good, Inspector. I see you are gifted with deeper insights into the people that come before you than many of your fellow officers. Foul deeds will rise, though all the earth overwhelm them to men's eyes."
Did you ever see that excessively drawn-out film of Hamlet, by the way? For less than an instant, Ghote hesitated. "No, sir, no. We were wanting to go. My wife, who is a graduate in English literature, is very much liking, but I had to—" "Your wife?" Sir Rustam suddenly shot out. "But—" "Inspector, excuse me 1 minute. There is a very urgent telephone call I must make in my study next door." Sir Rustam's urgent phone call did not last long. He came back to Ghote in less than 5 minutes. On his face, inexplicably, there was an absolutely beaming smile. "My dear fellow," he said, "I have some good news for you, very good. You see, it was only after you had left for Mahabaleshwar, on my instructions, and indeed in my wretched old ambassador itself, that I recalled something you had mentioned, that your wife was with child. So, my dear fellow, I then took the liberty of making some inquiries, and, of arranging, when I had found out how soon your wife's confinement was likely to take place, that if necessary, it should be at the Parsi lying-in hospital, where I happened to sit on the board." "And," thought Ghote, "some good news, can it be? Is it? Do I believe? Am I a father?" "Sir Rustam," he burst out. "Sir Rustam, what good news it is?"
"Oh, forgive me, Ghote. You are the father of a fine, healthy boy, born at the lying-in hospital no more than half an hour ago." In a bright cocoon of haloing light, Ghote in an instant saw himself, somewhere in the unknown regions of the Parsi lying-in hospital, plucking from Protima's arms a baby glowing with health. A baby boy, his son. My son, my son, my firstborn. Plucking him up, giving him at once a father's welcome to the world kiss.
Sam Dasta was reading H.R.F. Keating's story, Inspector Ghote's First Case. It was an independent production by Chris Wallace.